Good morning, or now afternoon officially. Thanks for having me. Thanks for being here. Thanks for caring about trees. With that, I have a lot of information to give you. And my camera is broken. I'm not sad, but you can Google me and look at my picture if you really need to. But let's get started. I just kind of titled this one Living with Trees because I just want to give you the information that I need you to have. This is what I do is I go out into yards and I teach people about their trees. I don't just say, yeah, your tree's good or bad. We talk about what kind of tree you have, a little bit of education. I want you to be familiar with trees when we're done with this. So we're going to talk about, of course, what they give us. Then we're going to jump into how they grow, live, and breathe, just a little bit, the basics, how to be a better tree owner, how an arborist assess risk so that you have a better understanding of when you need a tree company. And then I'm going to go into a little bit about how to pick a tree company. So why do we need trees? Well, this is the city in the forest and we like it. It's pretty. We would rather live on a tree-lined street than a non-tree lined street. Period. Of end of subject. Air quality, health and
Miss
well-being.
Bryant, could you please share your screen?
Is it not? It just shows that it is. I'm so sorry. Shows it not share screen. Okay. So sorry. Now is it good?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I thought it was showing. Okay. So why do we need trees? All of the reasons. One of the things I'm dealing with right now as an arborist more than anything with the nasty storms that we're having every day is people are constantly terrified of their trees. And trees are falling because trees are being removed, and then people are scared, so they're removing trees, and it has to stop. You know what I mean? So I hope that something gets through to some of you. Hopefully somebody today takes something they learned in this class and takes it and makes somebody a little less scared about trees. Now my thing won't turn. There we go. All right. So I just did a fun Google. The letters in black are what I did. Trees add property value. No question mark, no punctuation, and Google took off with it. This is how much trees add value to property. And that the first 3 pages were all about how large mature trees benefit your property. Now, when we lose a large mature tree, it is time for us to plant and replace that tree. Just a little thought. And then just Googling, are we healthier with trees? If you want to have fun, go down this Google pathway. There are so many research articles that go into this. In fact, the National Geographic did a story about disparity and poverty in tree canopy and cooling and all over the world, and how a treed neighborhood is often a money neighborhood. Tree maintenance does cost money, and you have to have money to plant trees too. So, but there was a study that covered 2 different neighborhoods. Portland, Oregon did this. It was a 25-year study that covered 2 neighborhoods but the same socioeconomic basis. And after 25 years, the kids had better grades, the people made better money, the people were 5% healthier than people in a non-treed neighborhood. So, the mature tree canopy is incredibly important, and we have to do what we can do to maintain it. And it starts here with y'all. So thank you very much. Okay. Again, trees reduce erosion, wind speeds, moderate soil and air temperatures, but we have to learn to live together. So as we're having, like I was saying, climate change is causing more extreme weather events. Trees are falling. People get scared. People remove trees. More trees have new environments. They're getting winds from different directions because they lost their friends. Now they're getting winds, and winds are coming in crazy. More trees fall. And it all starts here with you today and learning about when we really need to be concerned about a tree. In my experience, and this is me working in this industry for now 15 years, 90% of trees that I see after storms, the damage that they have done could have been prevented either by removal of the branch, removal of the tree, or moving property. So please remember that as we're all getting scared of storms. If you have your trees assessed and you educate yourself about trees, it's not such a scary thing to live in Atlanta anymore. So we are going to go into trees 101 right now. Okay. So this is one of the first things I talk about when we're in somebody's yard, because 90% of the time when I'm in somebody's yard, it's because they are scared of trees. Unfortunately, it is very rare that people call me and want to just be educated or want to know how to be a better tree owner. Normally, it's fear-based. I don't care how I get in your yard. I'm happy to get in your yard. But this is one of the major conversations is we have to separate trees as two parts. They are structure, and if you think about our skeletal system, and then they are health. So do we have the flu? So trees are a lot like that. The healthy part of the tree are the trees that's supposed to be in green, but it's in red. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. So the leaves are indicators of the health of the tree. And the health of the tree is controlled by the feeder root system of the tree. And very few people understand and know how important the feeder root system of the tree. When you see people sitting at the Dogwood Festival, sitting under the shade of the tree, or the Renaissance Festival of the tree, did you know that they're actually compacting the soil that can affect the health of a tree? We're going to jump into that later. And then the structure of the tree is what holds it up. That's all it does. That system does nothing but it grows and it gets stronger and it holds up the tree. And those are the twigs attached to the branches, attached to the trunk, attached to the root flare, where the tree gets fat, where it hits the ground, attached to the structure roots. So when you're thinking about roots and you're thinking about the ones with bark, those are the lazy roots. Those are the roots that hold it up. So we don't want to cut into those because they hold up the tree. But the real damage, what kills trees in construction, is not the damage to those structure roots. It is the loss of those very important feeder roots. Feeder roots are about the diameter of a human hair, and they can grow in about the same strength. So we really need uncompacted soil in order for tree roots to be able to move into that and continue their growth. We need to not plant a bunch of stuff under them at one time. We need to not run our plumbing pipes or our irrigation pipes through those because we're cutting them. And then the tree has to replace them. And that can very easily and very often starts the decline process of a tree. And a tree usually is dead within 3 to 5 years of that impact being done. Where do trees grow in Georgia? Everybody wants to talk to me about taproots. We don't have taproots. We have clay soil, and anything inside of that B horizon is poisonous to tree roots and has no water, no nutrients. So our tree roots in the state of Georgia, in the Piedmont area of the state of Georgia and the rest of the Southeast, grows exactly like that middle picture. They are growing out unless someone has amended the soil in a way that allows them to move down. They grow out twice the distance of the drip line of the tree and only in the top 6 to 8 inches of soil. Sorry, the clicking is my Great Dane walking by on the floors. So I'm not tap dancing or anything. I don't know if you can hear that. All right. So what can we do to make trees healthy? We can improve the soil. At the end of the day, with all of our tricks and tools in the arborist toolboxes, adding mulch, decompacting soil is absolutely the most important thing. Not fertilization, not soil testing, not anything other than getting the soil healthy. Because when we get the soil healthy, the tree has the ability to take care of itself. Trees don't need us. The forest takes perfectly good care of itself. And we come in and we mess it all up. So I have a slide later just to show you, just thinking in my brain, like quick pulsing action. What are the things that people do that kills trees? What are the things that Mother Nature does to kill trees? And the list is very long for humans and not so very long for Mother Nature. So we hurt trees. We come in and put in our pools and our houses. We put in our pipes. We go and use them as shade in parks and compact the soil without replacing mulch. We blow away their leaves. We disconnect urban trees by adding in sidewalks and streets. The trees lose their ability to communicate. They lose their ability to form these networks of mycorrhiza that love and live off of each other. And urban trees are just unhealthier trees because of that. I personally wish urban design would completely change and start putting trees back into areas where we're doing groupings of trees and not singly planted trees, because I think the science is there to prove why we don't need trees to be by themselves. All right, so I'm an arborist. You're scared of trees and you have me out, and now we're going to talk about it. What do I look for? Well, I look for non-normal things, right? So I'm looking for smaller leaves, lichen growing on young trees, insect infestations, abnormal growth patterns, leaves not out at the tips, meaning a tree's job is to get its green into sunshine. Why would you not have leaves at the tip and the tops of your branches? If we have chlorophyll showing, meaning if we have fall looking colors in the summer, what's going on? So just anything that doesn't look normal in a tree is going to draw my attention to it. And then we're going to start digging. Signs of decline. Again, it is a tree's job to get its green into the sunshine. So if we're seeing things like the picture on the right, that's on 4th Avenue Indicator, that was due to construction impacts. The tree was losing leaves at the tips and the tops. And if you were never there, it grows weird patterns up the side of the tree, which is a tree's desperation to try to get carbohydrate source into. If we can get our chlorophyll out there, we can hopefully get some sugar being made and we can survive. But again, general lack of vigor, change in color, size of the crown, anything abnormal is what needs to get us looking. Okay. So now we see that something is not correct, right? Something's not right. I've noticed that my tree looks this way, and I've picked up the leaf and I've walked around the neighborhood and I found 4 other trees of the same kind and they all look good. They do not look like my tree. So now I have a problem. So why? Well, usually it is because of us, and you need to just start digging around the base of the tree. This slide is an exact example of these people were intelligent enough to have me come out and do a due diligence inspection. It was a flip home somewhere in the Decatur, East Atlanta area. If you look up closely to the trunks of those pine trees, you can see that there is about 6 to 8 inches of grade change, about 8 to 10 inches away from the trunk of that tree. Now, remember how we discussed that all of the feeder roots for the tree are only in the top 6 to 8 inches of soil? So the picture on the left are those trees about 8 months later. They lost their entire root system and their ability to do anything, to drink water, to bring in nutrients, to store energy. Those trees were goners. I called it out. The city was involved, and they were able to deal with it before the purchase of the home, before the trees were dead. We were able to deal with it so that they at least didn't have to incur that cost of the removal of the trees. And what happens here is the death that you see in the top of the trees is actually brought in by the pine beetle. So the trees are stressed out. The trees send a pheromone into the environment. Nature is perfectly designed. Insects that come on, they kill off the tree can die, then the little baby trees can grow. So it doesn't work so well in our urban forest, but it sure is perfectly designed out in the native forest. But these are just, again, some of the things that we need you to look for or to think about before you start constructing any of these, and get in touch with an arborist first.
Hey, Christy, I have a question that's related to what you were just speaking on.
Perfect.
One question is, what's the maximum depth of tree roots in the city of Atlanta on average, if you have that information?
Yes. So critical root zone impact, which is what we call like the drip zone of a tree, the critical root mass that we have to protect. City of Atlanta requires an arborist be involved at 20% impact, and a tree is considered destroyed at 33% impact. Or if you get inside of the structural root plate, which means you're basically getting into the roots that hold up the tree. So you're right up on the trunk.
And the other question is it true that older trees absorb water at a slower rate than younger trees? And is there an exception to this? Or does it vary by species?
Well, it's obviously going to vary by species. I firmly believe in my heart of hearts that mature trees are absolutely responsible for 90% of the things that we need trees to do. if you go back to why is there a tree ordinance, it goes back to what is the lack of trees costing a city, right? And stormwater runoff is a big one. And so why are trees putting more weight on conserving an already existing canopy over planting new trees? Well, it's because the big trees do the work that we need trees to do.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry this is blurry. I couldn't make it go good, but this is the slide I was telling you about. This is the in black. This is what people do to kill trees. And down at the bottom is what Mother Nature does to kill trees. And you can see that it is us. It is not trees. People come and they're like, oh, my neighbor's tree. And I'm like, really? What are you doing? Like, do you know how many trees you've killed in your life? But that's what I do. I speak for the trees, and I sometimes have to tone myself back because I do get a little frustrated with the same kind of lack of education. I feel like people should be a little more educated about trees, considering that it is something that we see and live with every day. And, people know how to fix their dishwashers, right? But they don't know how to live with trees. But thank you again for being here and learning about it. But, these are the things. We're putting in too much dirt, putting our pipes through there. We're, bringing in a plant that's not from here. We're overplanting, we're monoculturing, which is increasing the insects and da 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 da. We're putting in pools, we're putting in patios, we're hanging bird feeders and never moving them. We're doing all the things that we have to do. Putting 1,000 ferns underneath your beautiful old oak. You have just removed so many of those very important feeder roots. So it's just a little.
It related to human caused impact on tree damage. Here's a question from one of our attendees. For trees that are previously damaged by city sewer construction with significant root cutting or probably machine compaction, is there anything property owners can do to support or shore up those existing trees to help them survive and recover?
Great question. No, because if the tree is small enough for you to be able to shore it up, then it really shouldn't have been damaged by tree construction, if that makes sense. Like it should have been, they could have been able to work around it. Unfortunately, municipalities have to get in there. They have to fix these things. And some of them are old, especially in Atlanta's infrastructure. It's old and the trees have grown up over it. And unfortunately and sadly, trees are damaged for infrastructure. There is nothing that we can do other than try to be an advocate for the tree. If you can, kindly and nicely ask them if they could maybe move their equipment around this side of the tree. Maybe you could put up some tree safe fence, maybe add a couple layers of mulch, do a kind of a root bridge system that you can reduce the compaction as they're running their equipment across it. Taking pictures, as far as like if the tree can hit you, you feel like it's not safe anymore because they've been that far into the root zone, taking pictures and documentation and bringing that to the city arborist or the county arborist is going to be a very important advocate because they are the ones that are going to make the determination if that tree comes down. Hope that helped. Thank you. Okay, we'll just move on and we can respond to it later if we need to. All right. I think that slide is a little out of order. All right, well, I guess we're just going right into pest and disease. So these insects here and these here are both cyclical insects that we see a million people call about, but they very rarely, if ever, do any actual harm to the tree. And what these are cyclical insects, kind of like a cicada. And we see them every 7 to 10 years, maybe 15 years. And they come in. And so like with these galls, these are all wasps that overwinter somewhere under the ground. And the females come up as the leaves are emerging in the spring. And this is so cool. Nature is so perfect. And they create these little, like the galls, their eggs are inside of these little packages, okay, these little balls. And then the egg hatches and the baby hatches and they fly away to hang out and do whatever microscopic wasps do until next spring when they need somewhere to lay more babies. So the baby, the larva gets, or the egg gets the protection of the leaf. Unfortunately for the tree, the leaf surface is destroyed. It's not photosynthesizing, so the trees do lose the leaves. If you have a pecan tree, you probably know this very well. Hickories get it. Jumping oak gall, the one on the bottom right, this is something that in 2016 it hit us in Atlanta, and it actually did kill some large mature white oaks, only because the white oaks just didn't have the reserve energy to put out all of their leaves. And so the tree just succumbed to the lack of the leaves. So it's sad to see those things happen. We as an industry jumped into action. We've got to figure this out. We can't let our white oaks die. Y'all, we have not seen it since. This year, we have the red oak leaf miner and the elm leaf beetle, or they're called the skeletonizers. So in the elm leaf, the little skeletonizer is the larva. So they come out first and they skeletonize some of the leaves, a lot of the leaves. And then the adults come back, and the adults are there and they just put little bites in it. So in this case, the adults like, whatever, the leaf's like, oh, well, you ate a bite of me, I'm perfectly fine. It's the larva that do the damage. And so this is happening in June and July. And so the tree has to again replace all of those leaves for fall. So it can be hard on trees. As of yet, we are in a holding pattern and we're waiting. We're not recommending any treatment for this or the red oak leaf miner. Red oak leaf miner was a lot worse last year. I'm seeing a lot less of it this year. I did see it kill one tree, but because the tree had gone under construction by one neighbor, and then the next year, the other neighbor replaced the driveway on the other side of the tree. And then last year, the final thing was the oak leaf miner. So in a healthy tree, it would have been a no big deal, but because this tree was already undergoing so much root loss, it just wiped the tree out. So these, for the most part, we just don't worry about these cyclical insects. This elm leaf beetle, I had to call a plant pathologist out of retirement because nobody in arboriculture in Atlanta knew what the heck was going on, because it had been so long since we had seen them. So we know they exist, but if we don't see them, and you've gone being an arborist for 15 years, you're going to have to dig. You're going to have to go and get into your network of people and figure out what's really going on. And that's part of being a plant detective. Some crimes are easy, some crimes are not. Okay. So these are common. It's my understanding that we already had a question pulled in about the Japanese beetle. These guys eat the leaf tissue. Kind of like, it's at the end of the day, the result for the plant is the same. However, my leaf surface is destroyed, I still have to replace the leaf surface. Something got my Japanese maple this season. I was traveling a lot, and I'm assuming Japanese beetles. And I see it putting out pretty green new leaves now. And I didn't even realize that I had lost that many leaves. But the tree is responding fine, and it's just a no deal. So the one on the right, on the top right, is orange striped oakworm. Now that is a big deal. If you live under, your patio is under a tree, you park right under a tree. They like to show up in the fall, late summer, early fall. They eat the leaves of the tree. The tree doesn't really care. They don't do enough damage to hurt the tree, but their poop is not much smaller than mouse poop. And it is about as appetizing. And that is the mess they make, is where he is. You see that? Isn't that great? Couldn't you just see sitting on your beautiful back patio and you're eating your dinner, and that is what you have land in your food? So not fun, but not bad. Then we have sucking insects. So these are the guys that are after the chlorophyll in the leaf. They are after the sugar source that the tree is making. It's greedy and rude of them, but this is what they do. The bottom left is a beneficial insect eating away at it. So we have both a ladybug and we also have an ant. So they are there because they're after the sugar that is secreted from the pea, or we call it honeydew. So everybody is nice and politically correct. It ain't honey, but it does fall like dew. And if you have a hackberry tree, you will be living under hackberry woolly aphids, and you will be peed on all the time. If you go out to your car and your hand sticks to the windshield, you have a sucking insect. These can be dealt with fairly easily, either with beneficial insects, but you need to go to your neighbor's house and release them, because we've proven that when you go buy ladybugs and you release them, they go to your neighbors. So I'm like, well, just go release them at your neighbors and they'll come to you, right? So, but you can do a fairly easy systemic drench that you pour around the base of the plant. It is moved up into the leaf. The little guys suck, they puncture the leaf. They take a suck, they get some poison, they die. I'm not one for a lot of chemical use, but if you're having to live, crepe myrtles tend to have these too. If you're living under them and you can't get the ants out of your house, and your life's become hell, treat the tree, get the insect populations kicked back, and then maybe go in with beneficial insects the next couple years to kind of keep the populations reduced. We live in nature and we're not going to prevent insects, but I do understand there can be times when they can make your life pretty helly. So, you can talk to an arborist, or you can, research some of your own stuff. But some of these things are pretty easy to deal with, or just wait them out and they'll be gone. Those orange striped oakworms are already gone.
Okay, one quick question.
Yes.
And it was actually the ambrosia beetle.
Okay.
But this question is in regards to beetles. A neighbor's tree died of ambrosia beetles. Is any treatment needed for trees in neighboring yards?
So, okay. So this year, of course, complicates the answer, because that's what nature does. So ambrosia beetle, there are hundreds of ambrosia beetles. The one that kills is the non-native Japanese ambrosia beetle, okay? And it normally only attacks trees that have called it in. So what we've seen this year, and I made this call on December 30th, I was like, guys, if you have a fig tree, if you have a eucalyptus tree, if you have a smooth bark tree that you have pulled out of where it is supposed to live, and you're trying to make it live in North Georgia, and we have extended 4-degree temperatures for 2 days with high winds, your tree is going to die, but it's not going to die immediately. It's going to leaf out in the spring. You're going to think everything's fine. In the meantime, it's sending out pheromones that are calling the ambrosia beetles in. And the ambrosia beetles carry a fungus that actually is what finishes off the tree. Normally, they are only attacking stress trees. So normally, absolutely not. And I've seen a lot of advice this year saying, oh, cut it down and burn it. How are you going to, has anybody ever burned unseasoned wood? You don't burn unseasoned wood. And that's just an unnecessary thing. Because again, normally they strike only stress trees. Now, this year we are having an outbreak of pine beetles. There are outbreaks in Tucker. I have a boat on Lake Altoona. I saw 2 pretty major outbreaks in Emerson this week, up in Bartow County. That I saw it this weekend. Personally, I still believe that it is nature doing its job. I personally believe pines are a pioneer tree. I love pines. I think they're amazing. I think they're strong trees. They do less storm damage than other trees, but everybody is terrified of them. But they are pioneer trees. Their job is to get the world ready for the other trees. Okay. So I think personally, every 7 to 10 years, when we have what we consider an outbreak, it's just nature saying, look, I haven't had enough events lately and not enough pines are dying. I need y'all to move on so that these hardwoods can start taking over. So, but that is happening this year, and it does happen occasionally where they go rogue and they start attacking and really spreading, and it's really spreading and taking out tree populations. There's nothing we can do to prevent it. We just have to wait till it's all done. Was there another one?
No, ma'am, that was the only one.
Okay. All right. So bot canker, cankers of oaks. So this is going into diseases, right? So now we've covered insects. Now we're going to be moving into diseases. Still the same thing remains. What does my tree look like normal? What does this species look like normal? And then, ooh, I might have a problem. So cankers are a generic term that refer to a wound or a sore in the bark or branch of a tree. So in Leland cypress, we see that as go down to the base of that dead branch and you are going to see something that looks like the bottom left picture. So it is a fungus that actually gets in and causes a canker. So the fungus is living in it, so the tree can't really defend the tissue. So you can cut out the damaged stuff behind it. But again, more importantly, you need to get your tree healthy. These are the things, all of these things are things that trees have the ability to fight off if we are not being mean to them and if they are getting their proper things. Leland cypress is one example. They're not horrible trees that people make them out to be, but we overplant them. They suffer their entire life for water nutrients, which makes them susceptible to these cankers and these root rots, and then they fall down because of root rots. And people are like, Lelands are crappy trees. Well, not really. We planted them correctly. Would they be? Because when I see them planted correctly, they're awesome trees. They keep that Christmas tree shape. They're pretty hardy. It's when they're overplanted that they have to be tortured, and like that's our fault, not theirs. So, oh, I thought I mixed these up. Okay, sorry, y'all. So going back into ambrosia beetle, the middle picture at the top is what y'all saw. Hitting again, see the smooth bark? So they attacked figs this year. Okay. The left side is what I saw at the lake. That is what it looks like in a pine forest when we have an overinfestation of pine beetles. Look at them wiping it out. So if you look at the edge of that, the first thing that happens when the fungus gets in the veins and arteries of the tree is it turns the needles yellow. And then within a week, they're red. And then within a week, they're brown. So you can see the progression of the pine beetle infestation. I think this picture was from 2014. Again, that's how long it's been since it's happened. And then over to the far right is what it looks like when they do. That's the frass. So that's the tree putting out the resin to try to respond to it, which is just, again, an amazing thing about pine trees is how fast they have the ability to defend wounds, but they can't beat the fungus. The fungus wins. Okay, so that's what happens. But again, remember, most of the time when a tree is being attacked by something that's killing it off, it is because the tree called it in, or because the tree's been stressed, or because the tree's had construction. All right. Tunneling insects. We have had the emerald ash borer move in. This is an invasive insect brought over from Japan. It is absolutely beautiful insect, but they like to go into the bark and they bore under the bark, laying their eggs. Those are called egg galleries. And that pushes the bark away from the cambial layer, which is what, think about it, like, why do we have skin? When do we hurt? If we're in a fire, why do we die? Because we lose skin and our body can't fight off the infection because we don't have our shell. So this is the exact same thing that happens to a tree. The tree has lost its shell because of this mean old little bug. Unfortunately, very seldom are tunneling insects called into the tree. They are more often an invasive, the Asian longhorn beetle, the emerald ash borer, and they're attacking species-specific healthy trees. And we have to know about them so that we can protect them, so that we can let the pest pass and kind of move on to another area, and then hopefully have to not protect the tree anymore. And by then, pest is gone, and hopefully we can maintain some of that tree species. But emerald ash borer, luckily in Georgia, we only had about 1 million ash trees when it moved in. I want to say 2014 to 16 is when we first started finding emerald ash borer in North Georgia. It is now in Atlanta. It is now killing ash trees everywhere. And ash trees, in case you're wondering, are native to creeks and streams and low-lying areas. So if you have a creek, a stream, you probably want to go look and see if you have any ashes. And if you want to protect them, now's the time. Once they have 30% dieback, they are past the point of being saved and they need to be removed. So let's talk about structure issues. So this is back from my days of getting to play with trees every day, as far as like storm work and stuff. So the center picture is after Irma. That tree was standing, but it had another tree that had completely upturned, and it was in that. So and they were both directly headed toward a house, and they were both about 30 to 35 inches in diameter. The amazing tree people managed to get the other tree out before it completely demolished the house, while still not like nothing happened. Nothing got damaged. It was the craziest thing, but that's what happened. So that's what it looks like when you have a tree that is about to give from the roots. So again, this one got hit by another tree and it just was too strong for the tree to hold up. Obviously, it had to be removed. That goes into we can't fix it, so we have to remove it. Then we've got things like included bark on the top left. That's a structure defect. The tree itself doesn't fall, just half of it will fall out, and then the other half has to be removed. But that's the structure defect. If we prune our trees, if you take Pruning 101 at Trees Atlanta, you can learn how to make baby trees be wonderful, structurally sound big trees. And that's way too much for us to go into today. So then we've got horizontal cracking from hollow trees in the top left. We've got me sitting inside of a tree. We've got, major structure roots obviously decaying away. These are all reasons you need to call in an arborist and have your trees assessed. Trying to hurry. Okay. Speaking of assessment, when we assess risk, when you have an arborist come out to your property, if they are certified, they have to take an extra 2-day class, take a half-a-day test in the field and written, and they get a 5-year track certification, tree risk assessment certification. The form on the right is what we actually use to formulate and put in a matrix when we decide whether or not a tree needs to be removed. Okay, but basically, this is how we decide. We go and we use our eyeballs and we look, what is the likelihood of tree failure? So what is the defect that I'm looking at and how bad is it, right? Is the wind tonight going to take it out? What's going to go? But in what time frame, right? Because if you say to me, Christy, is this tree going to die or fall? And I'm going to be like, yeah, in the next 50, 100 years. But what does that matter? We need to know what our likelihood of failure is in what time period. Most tree risk assessments cover a 2-year time period. So when we write a report about a tree, usually it's covering 2 years. So in the next 2 years, this tree has a minimal likelihood of failure. And then we talk about what are the consequences. If it fails, what does it hit? If it's nothing, then we don't remove the tree, right? What if it's a picnic table and we can move? What if we can just move the picnic table and not worry about it? What if it's just a broken branch and we remove the branch and we save the tree? So there's a lot that goes into deciding whether or not a tree comes down or not. And these are just kind of like how we kind of look at it, right? So it's likelihood of failure, what is the time frame of failure, and at what consequence is the failure. All right. This is pretty basic. This is how you pick a tree company. Every tree company has to be trained in these 2 standards. It is the ANSI 3000 or 300. How do we prune trees? What is the standard? What does acceptable tree pruning look like? Do we do it with spikes on? Do we remove large branches from trees? When do we remove a cracked branch? How do we cable a tree? All of that stuff is covered under the national standards. The Z133 is safety in trees. If you are picking a tree company, your first question is going to be, when is your training in Z133? Is the tree crew showing up in my property going to be CPR certified? When do they get their training? How long do your employees stay with your company? When they get out of the truck, are they worrying about a safety plan? Are they talking about how they're going to remove that tree? Are you watching them? Are they putting on PPE? And are they asking you, I need to verify your address because if I need to call 911, I need to know where we are. Are they working on a safety plan before they ever get into the tree? We are the deadliest industry. Year after year after year, we're the deadliest industry. So you want your people to be trained and you want them to be safe. So just by asking some minimal questions at the first phone call will help you decide whether or not you want to use that tree company or not. And then what can we do? What can we do? We can learn how our trees look when they're good and healthy. We can mulch. Again, the forest is pretty dang good at taking care of her trees. So wherever we can replicate the forest, we're going to have better impacts to our trees, right? We don't want to do mass plantings under trees. We want to remember to put dogwoods under oak trees. We want to put the right plants in the right place. You're not allowed to get mad at Georgia Power if you go plant an oak tree under their power lines. That's not the way it works, folks. Remember the roots, they're half the tree and the most important part of the tree. Okay. If you have mature trees, if you are lucky enough to get to live and own large trees, find an arborist that you like, that you trust, and build a relationship with them, because they're going to love your trees. They're going to remember your trees. Build a relationship with them. It's going to be the most important resource that you have. Because let me tell you, I have my normal clients and they can call me on a Sunday afternoon and I'm going to pick up the phone and say, oh, all right, send me a picture, because I love them and I love their trees. Okay. Does that make sense? And the last thing is, get out there today. Take some pictures of your property, because people get scared after storms. Neighbor's tree comes through their house. Next thing you know, they're thinking that trees are leaning and all of that. So get out there today and take some pictures of your tree. Go out there in January and take some pictures of your property, save them on a file. And next time you're worried about it, now you have a resource. Go back and take a look and say, no, no, no. Took that picture in July and that tree looked like that last year too. We're good. Okay. And most importantly, trees grow in the dirt, y'all. If we save the dirt, we can save the trees. And lastly, where do you want to live? And what are we going to do to make that happen?
Okay,
And
so
that's
a
it.
question related to the last slide that you had up. This question is, can you safely sheet mulch around mature trees to smother grass, or does that negatively impact the tree roots?
No. In fact, that is how I prefer you to get my trees mulch. Take a weed whacker and just scalp the turf and simply lay your 4 inches of mulch on top.
Okay, and another question regarding replicating forest environment. How closely can you plant an overstory tree to an existing partial shade tolerant understory tree? For example, we have an existing redbud and plan to add a post oak in our relatively small yard and would like them to be as dense/close as feasible.
I would say just plant that tree right outside of the drip line of the dogwood. Maybe 5-6 feet away. I mean, if you have a small yard, post oak's a really big tree to put in a small yard, but they're slow growers, so it won't be your problem. Sorry. And I love that you're planting post oaks. It's one that very few people think about, and it's one of my absolute favorite trees. If you're on TikTok, follow Speaking for Trees on TikTok, and I got to actually age a post oak up in Cumming the other day, and it was really cool. But it needs to be, dogwood trees tuck themselves under big trees, but we do want it far enough away that we're not going to hurt the dogwood. So without seeing it, it's kind of a hard question to answer arbitrarily. I hope that helped. If not, ask again.
Okay, and I have 2 more questions related to tree health. The first question is, what time of year should you cut epicormic growth? Anytime or just winter? And should you still cut those growths if they are now several years old or a few inches in diameter?
Okay, great question. So it used to be, because we're like the medical field, right? Healthcare wasn't the same 20 years ago as it is today, and neither is tree work. Okay, so we used to say, get rid of the epicormic sprouts, and here's why. It's because they're not well-attached branches. They're dormant buds that have been reactivated, and they are not supposed to, we're not supposed to be growing branches in a 30-inch oak down at the ground level, right? Because trees get bigger every year, and that's why they don't have interior branches, and those branches are shaded. So we thought, oh, stupid trees, y'all are dumb. We're going to cut off these non-well-attached branches. Dr. Ed Gelman of Florida State said about 10 years ago, let's not be dumb. The trees know what they're doing, and they're putting the carbohydrate source directly where they need the carbohydrate source to be. So when we see epicormic sprouts a lot is when we prune a tree too heavily, and the tree starts putting out epicormic sprouts around the wounds of where those branches were. Now what we say is leave them there for 2 to 3 years until the branch reaches 2 to 3 inches in diameter. We hope at this point The tree is reallocated as carbohydrate resources, realize it doesn't need those branches, and we're not going to harm it by removing them. But we don't want them to get that much bigger because they are not well attached and they are hazardous stuff under them.
Okay, is there more slides, or would you like me to begin with the general Q&A?
No, that's it. That was the end.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so first question from general Q&A is, do sweet gum trees choke out growth of other species? For example, if I'm looking at a quarter of an acre and I see a lot of sweet gum growing 10 feet, 2 inches in diameter and nothing else is growing.
No, the opposite is happening. We have 3 pioneer trees. When we clear land, and we're not talking about invasive species, I'm talking about the way it's supposed to be. When we clear land, or when a tornado runs through, or whatever happens that gets us down to bare dirt, the first thing that happens in the Piedmont are the little baby pine trees come in, right? They remember I was 7 when all the neighborhoods were cleared and all the stuff happened. What comes in? The pine trees. And then the sweet gums and the tulip poplars move in. And then after they've been there and established for a couple of years, you're going to start seeing the other guys come in. You're going to start seeing the native hickories. You're going to start seeing those mid-story and understory canopy trees come in. You'll start seeing the dogwoods. You'll start seeing the maples. You'll start seeing all of the other trees come in because, again, the pioneer tree is doing its job. It's getting life ready for the weaker species. I don't want to say weaker because everybody knows that oaks are awesome, but the more picky trees. There we go.
Thank you very much. We have another question. It is, what are your suggestions for planting and caring for a recently purchased potted black locust tree? And also, does it need protection from deer?
Probably for the first couple of years, it might. I mean, it depends on where. If you're asking that question, you probably live where deer are an issue. So, they can rub on any tree. So it would not be a bad idea to put like a tomato kind of cage around it. There's lots of information available, but the most important part of tree planting is go volunteer for Trees Atlanta, and they're going to teach you how. You're welcome, Trees Atlanta. But this root flare being exposed is the most important part. Okay. You want the tree to be where at that root flare at grade. 99% of trees that I see planted, that's probably an exaggeration. 90% of trees that I see planted are planted too deeply and they bury this root flare. And when you bury the root flare, you bury those very important feeder roots because their highest concentration is going to be up against the trunk and they get less dense as we head out toward past the drip line. Okay. So that's number 1. Find the root flare and then plant at that grade. And then go volunteer for Trees Atlanta and they'll teach you how to do it.
Yes, we will. Let's see. Next question. Why do people like longleaf pine straw for landscaping? How and when did this become a popular thing?
I don't know why it's such a popular thing. Longleaf is prettier and it lasts longer. But I am a proponent of match the substance, like match your mulch to your trees. So if you have longleaf pine trees, cool. I like longleaf pine straw. If you have loblolly, I would prefer you just leave the natural mulch. If we have hardwood, I want you to leave the leaf litter as much as possible and go use hardwood mulch. Hardwood mulch does more of the things we need mulch to do. It lasts longer. It holds more moisture in, it combats weeds better, it breaks down slower, it breaks down better because guys, you know what breaks down? The organic matter doesn't just rot, it's groovy little things in the soil that move up through the surface of the soil in order to break that stuff down. Well, guess what they're doing? They're putting oxygen pockets in there. What needs oxygen pockets? The feeder roots of the tree. So really mulch is the most important thing you can do. But I do like it when we match the substance to the tree.
Thank you. What ferns or shallow leaf natives can be planted under trees? Should you plant different things for different types of trees?
No, I don't. That's, way too technical. Obviously, don't plant anything full sun and go in over time. Keep that 20% thing in the back of your mind. 20% for trees. We don't remove 20% of the leaf or 20% of the roots in a growing season. So you got to give them a year. So if you want Pachysandra under your tree, have Pachysandra, but I want you to go in and do a couple of flats. And then next year you can add a couple of flats. I like ferns. I love ferns. I love autumn joy. I mean, that's autumn joy sedum, autumn ferns. I mean, I love ferns. So I like any of them. The wood fern, the southern shields, any of those are great ferns.
Okay, and we have a couple more questions. The first one is, I recently planted a red barren peach, pears, and apricot. Is there something special I should do to take care of them?
UGA Extension has a wonderful homeowner publication of caring for fruit trees. You can go to Georgia Extension and just search publications, and then inside the publication, search for it. That they have some great. They have a homeowner pruning guide for shrubs. There's a lot of great resources, and I'm pretty sure I put them at the back here. Yeah, extensionuga.edu. Go there and just search publications, and there's so much amazing information on there, and it's all free and it's all researched, and no, it's unbiased, and it's just great info.
Thank you. And we have our last question. What is the device called that arborists use when they poke into trees to see if it's hollow?
Okay, so that is a resistograph. And we also have tomograph, but you have to do a resistograph to figure out where to do a tomograph. I have a resistograph, and I use my resistograph probably twice a year, because usually trees are pretty dang easy to read. Okay, either it's like, whoo, yep, that guy's got to go, or oh, it's fine. It's very rare that we really have to drill into a tree, and of course, there are always unintended consequences. We can introduce funguses into trees, so using resistance drilling equipment is something that we hold in the back of our pocket and use only when we have to answer questions that we can't answer with our eyes.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Christie, for joining us today on this Ask the Arborist series. Just a quick reminder that we have started the Trees Atlanta tree sale. The online sale is already active as of September 1st, and we have our in-person tree sale the first weekend of October on that Saturday at the Carter Center. Thank you again, Christie, for joining us. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email me at msoto@treesatlanta.edu or education@treesatlanta.edu. Reminder for those who need the ISA CEU credit, please email me with your full name and your certification number. Thank you so much, Ms. Bryant.
Thanks. Everybody have a great day. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.